Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
Following and reporting on the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, Ben Goessling is in studio at Ben Goessling via Twitter/X at it's Goessling. And I'm Nordo in for PA. Thanks for hanging out with me. You're usually with us on Tuesdays, but and I did not know this was not a Jordan Addison is going to get a DUI this weekend, so join me on Monday. But in this respect, it kind of worked out in terms of that being the hot talker around the Purple over the course of the weekend. It's I believe he was, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. He's in L.A. Now, he went to USC, of course, as well, but he's in L.A. last week, and I believe he was even on the red carpet with JJ and wide receivers coach Keenan McCardell. They were all the premiere festivities for the Netflix doc that released last Wednesday, Receiver. And then the reports come out, and I just heard about it yesterday, but Friday night near LAX, near the airport, he is taking a nap. Yeah. But kind of in a bad spot behind the wheel of and Rolls-Royce has been a popular talker about this. Young kid, rookie contract, what's going on with that? Get a financial advisor, all of that. I'm not here to judge that. But the being asleep in moving traffic situation's awful. Yeah. How did that hit you yesterday, and how have things kind of been bouncing around over the last 24 hours as the news broke?
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's certainly not something that the Vikings want to see, and really not something that you want to see from him, especially given what had happened last year where he gets pulled over going 140 on I-94.
Have you seen the dog yet? Do we know that the dog exists?
I have not seen the dog, no. This one, I think he actually did a camp and an autograph session in the Twin Cities over the weekend. Okay. So going to LAX, I don't know the timing of all of it, but I do know he was in the Twin Cities over the weekend. So obviously had to get from LA back here. So maybe the reason he's at LAX is to fly. Again, I don't know the whole itinerary there, but I do know he did a couple of appearances in the Twin Cities over the weekend, which would have been after the arrest, which occurs late Friday night. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those things that I think is going to have ramifications. Typically in the NFL, and we saw it with Wes Phillips, and NFL players tend to have ramifications for this as well, possible suspension, possible fines, those sorts of things. We'll have to see if charges come in this case after the arrest. That, I think, is the next domino in all of it. But it's certainly not something that the Vikings probably want to be dealing with after what happened last year. And we should point out with the Kyrie Jackson stuff, when he is killed in the manner that he is, and it certainly is another reflection on the seriousness of all of these things, drinking and driving. The timing is never good, but that adds another level to it, I think. Yeah,
and people have been questioning kind of, and it's none of this is known at this particular point. Maybe we'll hear more actually from the arresting agency. I can't remember if it was CHP or if it was
California
CHP.
Highway Patrol.
Okay. Yep. So we'll eventually maybe hear more, but he's arrested. Let's say he's in custody at 11:30. Well, he's already out of the mix at 2 a.m. Yeah. So he's released quite quickly. You know, was there potential that maybe this wasn't alcohol, but it was marijuana or it was an edible or something like that, and he just got tired and picked the wrong spot to go to bed. But you nailed it in terms of, so I'm trying to find precedent for how they handle this. And there's the logical aspect of just in a vacuum, it's Jordan Addison. Yeah. He has the speeding thing a year ago, and now he has the potential DUI. That in itself needs to be addressed. But I wonder how that emotional element of Kyrie Jackson losing him a week before kind of amplifies it. And I can tell you from the fan base perspective, it has amplified it greatly. Yeah. And so how the team handles it, I saw that, and there was something so this is, and hopefully this is updated information, that typically what the precedent is that a player would be suspended for one game and lose a game check. And so, you know, it's so early to speculate exactly how the team will handle it. But I in some way, I don't feel that similarly to when Wes Phillips got a DUI, that they kind of handled it internally, and it just he was out of the mix. And you said this before we went on the air. It was 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, 3 weeks without pay.
This one might have to hurt him a little bit in season. Doesn't this feel a little bit different?
It does. I think the point you made, though, about DUI is a good one in the sense that the arrest report does not talk about BAC content.
It does not.
It does not. They said suspicion of DUI, I believe, was the language in the arrest report. If it was an edible or something and not alcohol, that's legal in California. So that may change all of the nature of this, too. So if it's alcohol, certainly given the Kyrie Jackson stuff and just given the nature of it in general, I think the precedent for that is 3 games, and the optics of it obviously are really bad at the moment. You don't want people driving under the influence of anything.
No.
And falling asleep at the wheel, not good at all. But the legality question, I wonder if that gets more complex. If it's, well, I don't know, because if it's a DUI, it's a DUI. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how the legality of all of that will go if it's not alcohol in it. It is something like that. It's certainly something worth watching. But regardless, this being twice now, I think there's going to have to probably be a little more from the Vikings and probably the NFL than we saw last year. Just the fact that this is 2 summers in a row is going to be kind of hard to ignore for everybody, I think.
Indeed, and really on the heels of now a week removed from what happened with Kyrie Jackson, his 2 former teammates, Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Litton Jr., I believe, and there was a shooting at their memorial over the weekend. I mean, it's just the last week here in terms of violence and bad decision making. I'm just curious now, because eventually I'm going to turn the corner on this conversation, Ben, and I'm going to go full ham, and we're less than 2 weeks of training camp. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But if you're in that if you're inside that building in Eagan right now, I mean, just heavy hearts, frustrated minds, specific with what Jordan is dealing with now. That there's a lot of emotion and things that are very cloudy over TCO.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you see every NFL coach go through things like this at some time or another. Kevin O'Connell was going to have it happen. I think if you do this long enough, it's just going to happen. And I think Mike Zimmer used to talk about this. That one of the things, he used to have this set of advice, like a few things that Bill Parcells told him after he got the job. And one of the things was, something is going to happen every single day in your time as a head coach that you wish wouldn't happen. And if you can't handle that, get a different job.
Yeah.
So everybody goes through that. Bill Parcells gives that advice to Mike Zimmer, but it applies to Kevin O'Connell. It applies to any NFL coach in that seat. You have to deal with a lot of different things just because it's a complex job with a lot of people that have a lot of things going on, and people make decisions that you wish they would not. But this stretch, I have to think in the last week and a half, is one of the tougher segments of time Kevin O'Connell's had in his 2.5 years as the head coach. And it certainly puts the opening of training camp in a little bit of a different light. It is going to be one of those things, and he talks about this all the time with culture, is that it gets tested when things get difficult. And that's usually in the context of what's happening on the field and then losing games and all those kinds of things. But I think there's probably an element of that here as well, in terms of just they are coming in a week with a lot of things percolating that they wish were not, either in the case of Jordan Addison or tragically in the case of Kyrie Jackson. And trying to respond to all of that is it's a challenge for everybody, but I think certainly a lot of that starts at the top and the tone that he sets in the midst of that.
2013, when you started back with the Vikings, is that accurate?
2012 was my first year.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So, but Zimmer comes in 2014, and this jumped into my brain when you were talking about Zimmer, and I mean the early days specifically. He was basically just every press conference regurgitating what Bill Parcells had just told him in a phone conversation. Very close relationship there. But we used to, as recent as 4 or 5 years ago, PA and I would joke about the Zimmer Chronicles. Because you want to talk about, 2014, he's brand new head coach, and I forget how the season started. I think there's a win down in St. Louis.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And
first game with Adrian and Cordero Patterson
absolutely.
under that offense, and Cordero goes nuts, and they look great.
And Teddy's a rookie, but Castle's going to start.
Yep.
Castle hurts himself down in New Orleans.
Yep.
And then Teddy from there on out, the shootout with the Falcons at the College Stadium, all that. But Adrian, of course, is the A topic, right? And then many people would argue that maybe Spielman should have handled the process of, we're going to put him on the exempt list. We're just going to make him inactive. What are we going to do?
Right.
And there was some backpedaling and some forward striding trying to be done simultaneously. It didn't work out. But then 2015, missed field goal. Ultimately, then Teddy into 2016. 2017, kind of a miracle season of sorts. So that's actually, the Chronicle was positive. 2018 is underwhelming. I mean, you just go.
Everson Griffin.
Season by season, the Chronicles, and sadly enough, as it is starting out, it feels like in some ways KOC is having to dodge some of those roadblocks at the same time. It hasn't stopped.
No, it hasn't, and he's had, I think, a fairly quiet first couple of years in terms of off-field news and all of types of things, but it's coming, and it just does. I think if you do it long enough,
inevitable. You're right about
law
that.
of averages. It's going to happen, and I think that going in. I'm sure he knows that, but it does test you differently than other facets of the job, and it is going to be one of those things that in year 3, he's going to start training camp with a lot of those questions coming his way.
So you guys are going to be peppering him with some of the A section related questions. There's no doubt that's what you're supposed to do, and you'll do it.
Yep.
But then on the other end, there are 5 first-round picks that remain unsigned in the NFL as we woke up this morning. 2 of them are on the Minnesota Vikings.
Yep.
There are no contracts as of yet signed, sealed, and delivered on yours for either J.J. McCarthy or Dallas Turner. So we have the real-life awful stuff that's happening, and now just from a football standpoint, why are our first-round picks not signed yet?
Yeah, It's interesting because there's not that much you can figure out in these first round contracts these days. A lot of the language is pretty boilerplate. There are certainly things about when you get your cash. I mean, there's different things about when you get your signing bonus. Is it going to be paid in installments? Is it paid up front? My understanding is the Vikings have typically done more of the installment stuff with a lot of veteran players. That's been the case. And certain players have had exceptions to that. I think Justin Jefferson's, I haven't seen all of the details of Justin Jefferson's new deal, but Kirk Cousins certainly had exceptions to that. So there's probably some of that stuff that is being debated just in terms of when it all comes in. But the amount is kind of set in stone. It's not like there's a lot of things to haggle about there. It's typically just language in contracts about when the cash gets in your pocket. I imagine that's what they are talking about. I'm sure that the deals will get done, but when you are going into training camp with neither of them signed, it is certainly an open question. It's one of those things where deadlines tend to spur action on this stuff, and my guess is it probably gets done late next week before they are on the field, especially for a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who they do not want missing time.
No.
They want him to be out there absorbing as much as he possibly can, and I think that will probably put a little more of an urgency sort of thing into it.
You think Kwesi just likes waiting? You think he just likes waiting until 11 p.m.? I think that's when he does his best work.
I think he probably sees it as, if there is a better deal for me to make, I don't need to settle for something less because it's uncomfortable now.
Right.
I think that is a lot of his approach. I
think
he
will seriously, and it's no disrespect to JJ or Dallas, but if there's any way I can get this to be even just a smidgen, almost unrecognizably better for my side, I'm going to make sure and wait it out that I can do that.
Yeah, and I think that's his job, and he'll talk a lot about being solutions-oriented and trying to figure out how we can get to a place where it works for everybody, but his job is to manage the Wilf's money as if it's his own. I mean, you'll hear him, he'll kind of share some of those thoughts that is his approach. So, yeah, I think for him, it's a little bit of, I know that there's a lot of talk about this and it's not done yet. And certainly all of that is fair until it is done. But I don't get the sense that he's terribly uncomfortable with the tension, knowing that we can get to a place eventually where it does get done, even if it takes a little longer, because you've seen this with negotiations with him a lot. He's got his things that he wants, and he's got his line, and he's going to, I think, work from that perspective as long as he can, unless something changes. And I think it gets done. I think that a lot of this is going to get figured out, but I don't get the sense that he's terribly uncomfortable working the shot clock, as I've heard him say a few times about draft picks too.
Yeah, he's the James Harden of this situation.
Yep.
He will dribble the air out of it and then throw one up at the buzzer. And frankly, got to give him credit. 2024 has been good on that side of things for Mr. Adolphus.
Yeah.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, at Ben Goessling via X. He covers the Minnesota Vikings. What has it been like? This Jordan Addison thing kind of took over conversations amidst the weekend. But, hearing about yourself, hearing quotes, you should have been at the premiere,
I guess,
last week for Receiver.
Yeah.
Have you watched it, enjoyed it? What have you taken from it?
Yeah, I'm only like 2.5 episodes into it. So Abbott told me before, he's like, I heard you all over Receiver. Like, I'm not even that far into it yet, because I think it was the Raiders game where he's coming back that I show up in there. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. I don't think I had a lot of cameos in quarterback. Like, the back of my head may have been in there once.
That counts?
It was either the back of my head or the back of Dane Mizutani's head. And I think it was Dane's. I don't know what the back of my head looks like a whole lot because I just don't see it.
You don't see it that often.
I mean, I see his more than mine. So It looked more like his than mine. But no, I don't think I was in there much. So no, haven't experienced that part of it quite yet. It has been interesting to watch those first couple episodes, to hear Jefferson talk a little bit about nobody was going to tell me to stay off the field. And you heard a lot of that internally. You heard a lot of discussion about, hey, this guy has gold jacket. He has break all of the records kinds of stuff in his mind, and he's not going to sit out as means to get a better contract or to get more security in the meantime because he doesn't want to miss games. It's interesting to hear it from his mouth, though, where he's saying, nobody is going to tell me to stay out of the game as long or longer than I need to do it. And, when Tyler Williams is talking about 8 to 10 weeks, that's where they ended up in terms of the timetable of how long he was out. I think that was interesting. I think, a lot of it, you get to see his family, which I've found to be I think that's good for people to get a sense of how influential and involved his family is. Because I've noticed that kind of from the beginning. I remember writing about him as a rookie, and you didn't get quite the same introduction to everybody because he didn't have the press conference because it was during COVID. So getting to know his family, getting to see his family, all that kind of stuff didn't happen in the way that it probably normally would. But I remember talking to his dad before that season, before his rookie season, about all of the pickup basketball games they would play. Like, his dad was a good basketball player, played in college, and I don't think and they talk about this a little bit in Receiver, they were never very willing to just let him win. I mean, his two older brothers played college football at LSU, so it's a family of great athletes who would go at it pretty hard, and there was no like, oh, you're the youngest, we're going to let you make this one. Good job, Justin, all this kind of, it's like, no, if you want to beat me, you're going to have to get big enough to beat me. And I remember his dad talking about the day he finally did it, he let me hear about it, and then you see a little bit of that in the documentary as well. But that's how he grew up, is you had to earn your way to all of that stuff, and not just from the two older brothers, but from dad as well. And I think it's been interesting, and you hear this from people around the Vikings too, the influence that his family has in trying to keep him grounded, which I think by and large they've done a pretty good job of doing. And you'll hear Keenan McCardle talk about that too, like the influence of his parents, particularly his mom as well. I remember Keenan telling me once, she doesn't take any stuff. Like, he's not going to be able to talk back to her much and get away with it. So there's a little bit of, I think, that approach, the groundedness that comes from family. And I think it's been interesting to watch that get highlighted in the documentary, because that is a big part of his approach. I mean, his brother's been involved in a lot of things with negotiations, with even kind of being a personal chef. His brother played quarterback at LSU, so he was taking him through college plays when he was in high school. All of this stuff with him is part of his story, and I think it was a good choice by Netflix to show that piece of things as part of this.
Well, it's an eye-opener, too, because his family exists, but you actually, for the most part, you don't see them everywhere Justin Jefferson is.
They're not terribly loud.
No, a lot of players, and you've followed the Vikings and you've been in sports long, like you will always see them, whether it's at training camp practices or potentially community gatherings of any sort, something going on at the facility. But certainly at games in particular, you get down in the bowels of U.S. Bank Stadium and you got the family section, and they're all down to, you don't see Justin's family consistently, prominently part of the social aspects around the team, but they're there. Yep. And that was one of my favorite parts too, is just kind of starting to understand like, oh yeah. And for me, to be honest, probably more so than you, is I haven't thought about his family. I haven't thought about the competition among his brothers. I haven't thought about his mom and dad, and obviously anytime someone, gets to, parents play a role. That's obviously parents are involved. So, but no, that was super cool to see that. But yeah, they're just kind of off to the side. Yeah. Like, he's going to handle his thing and he's going to gritty his win. No, he's going to get his money. Don't worry about that. He's one of the best in the league, all that. And we're just going to hang out here and watch it. Yeah,
the thing I remember a couple of years ago, too, he was our sports person of the year in 2022. So you do the big story at the end of the year when that comes out. And I talked to his dad as part of that. And we were kind of just going back on how they processed all of this and in light of the catch in Buffalo and all of this kind of stuff. And he prefaced all this by saying, like, I've had 2 kids play at LSU before him. Jordan Jefferson, his older brother, started in the national championship game. Like, we weren't the parents that walked into this saying, oh my gosh, my kid is a star. I have to milk this for all it's worth. It was sort of like, we've been at games in Baton Rouge and Tuscaloosa and Athens and all these places for years. This is not new in the sense that they're not getting stars in their eyes about it. I mean, one of the things he said is like, I've worked 30 years in the same job. I want to get my 30 years so I get my full pension. This is something I've earned. I'm not going to quit my job because my kid is an NFL star now. I mean, even that kind of approach is like, no, my life is not defined by the fact that my son is becoming a star. And even the Buffalo game, they could have gone, but they were like, no, it's going to be cold. We're going to watch it on TV. We'll stay home. Nobody gets to come over because we want to watch seriously. But he said that was the moment where he called Justin after the game and said, okay, you're a superstar now. But it took that long before he was willing to kind of go there and say that. And even, I think, since then, it's still sort of that same kind of baked-in humility that his parents, I've seen a lot of that from them, and I think he's gotten a lot of that.
Get your 30 in, dude. Yeah. Get your pension. That's fine. Yeah, kid's probably going to help you with some stuff down the road, absolutely.
But you've put in that much time for something for yourself. Finish the job, no doubt. I mean,
he taught his kids that, clearly.
Yes. Yep. I think there's a lot of that approach that in covering him and covering his family over the last few years, one is pretty closely linked with the other, and it has kind of stayed that way. And I think a lot of the way he goes about his business is a reflection of that.
That's Ben Goessling in studio. Another segment more on the Minnesota Vikings here as we get, again, as I said, I'm going to turn the page.
Yeah.
We're less than 2 weeks from training camp.
Less than a week now. I think the rookies report Sunday.
That's right. So that's where we're at, and we're going to turn the page on this thing around the corner. It's Nordo in for PA 9 to noon on the Fan with a cash winning opportunity, Max.
Yes, sir, and I do have the keyword this time. The Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword credit at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword credit. Enter it now at KFAN.com. Ball. This Friday, not last Friday, not next Friday, this Friday. Join us at Forgotten Star Brewing for the ultimate KFAN party. Doors open at 5 p.m. and we'll kick off the party with the Star Bank Red Carpet broadcast at 6:30. Plus, some of your favorite fan games for great prizes, including tickets to see Metallica at U.S. Bank Stadium and rounds for roofs. Thanks to Star Bank and live music from the Chris Hockey Band. Get the full details on this free, F-R-E-E, free party now at KFAN.com/partay.
Maxx Fuller producing 9 to noon today. I am Eric Nordquist, Nordo, from 9 to noon. PA will be back with us a week from today. Ben Goessling in studio. It is less than 2 weeks. As a matter of fact, as you mentioned, rookies report on the 21st. So that's just 6 days. That's on Sunday. Their first practice, I forget, is somewhere towards the end of next week. What, and this is such a, just, I don't know, it's not a bias, but I was thinking about it where, do you have a training camp titan? You know, the guy that you're looking forward to seeing that, Dallas Turner's the guy that we're all really, put pads on this guy. Let's see how hard he really punches.
Yeah.
Let's see what that looks like in full view. But do you have a guy that's just like, we've talked about this guy. This guy keeps popping up in conversations when we're reporting on the team and I'm having conversations with the team. This guy's name just keeps sticking in everybody's craw. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a hype tour. I don't know if it's out of necessity. But I just threw a name down like Levi Drake Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Like that's somebody that I've had Rubes ask me a ton about, that I've heard a lot in conversations that I've had. And we're always, that diamond in the rough. And certainly, back end of the draft, 7th round, that would be certainly diamond in the rough. But do you play in your mind at all with that as you get forward, get ready and get looking forward for training camp?
Yeah, you certainly do, because those things are going to be what you cover for the next couple of months and these stories that pop up. And in some cases, it's guys like Ivan Pace that turn into big-time contributors on the team. Levi Drake Rodriguez is a good one. I think the energy level and just the story there. I mean, they have a number of guys in this draft whose stories coming into it are pretty unique. Kyrie Jackson, of course, tragically, we won't see that story continue. He was certainly a guy that had a pretty unique story coming into it, but
I still think about that too.
Yeah, like he might have been that guy.
That was the story. We were talking about Justin Jefferson's family last segment, and kind of as he has ascended, his family has stayed very muted in some ways, level playing. Well, you kind of got to know this obscure story through Kyrie Jackson's mom and just some reporting there and just the amazing road that traveled just to get there.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Yeah. I think that's and would have been in a spot where they need people to contribute too. So yes, that part of it does kind of linger into training camp. But yes, whether it's a guy like Rodriguez, I think Jalen Naylor has been injured enough that it's hard to say, yes, this is going to be the breakout year, but they continue to talk about him like they're optimistic that more can come out of his game if he's able to stay healthy. And I think he's going to have opportunities whether or not Jordan Addison is, I think if there was any kind of discipline, it would probably affect the regular season. I don't think we'd have anything in the preseason. Even if that is the case, if Addison's on the field, which I expect will probably be the case, Naylor, I think, is going to have opportunities because they do need receiver depth. They have been intrigued by him. The speed has certainly been there, and they want to see him kind of continue to add to it. But I think,
but he's never evolved beyond special teams.
No, he hasn't.
2 years,
at least not that we've seen. The amount of time you continue to hear people say, "Hey, there's a little more to this guy," and they need a receiver 3.
Yep.
That would be a name I'd keep an eye on. I think too. A lot of talk about Robert Tonyan in OTA's minicamp. And again, we'll see. The guy that caught 10 touchdowns in the past for the Packers. Is there anything left to him? I don't know. But there are going to be opportunities with TJ Hawkinson out. So it's in a couple of those spots where for as many weapons as they have at the top of the passing game, they do need to find some depth there. Yeah. So I have my eye on some of those things a little bit too.
No, I like the idea of Jalen Naylor. This is kind of a hearts and minds angle with Thayer Thomas. He's got the Wolf of Walk-On charity down at NC State and battled every bit. I think his brother's with the Seahawks organization maybe. So I'm thinking about guys like that too. But you mentioned Tonyan, and now he's completing the full NFC North tour.
Yes.
Congratulations to him. His fourth and final stop started with the Lions, then the Pack, then the Bears, now here in Minnesota. Tonyan's interesting because of the ambiguity that remains around the injury situation or health and rehabilitation. I was talking with Max earlier, and this is no fault of you and those that cover the team, but it's, all we're hearing is the rehabilitation's on track. It's on track for what, right? Okay, so he's probably running in a straight line at this point.
Yep.
And he's probably been in front of a jugs machine and he's catching balls. But in terms of cutting, in terms of the confidence in the knee and all of that, I'm still, as we are so close to training camp, I'm still arms up. Is he going to be ready after a month? Is he going to be ready after a game? Is it going to be after the bye? Like, that's still, I still feel as uninformed as I was 5 months ago.
Sure.
Let's say.
Yeah, I think the thing I would keep an eye on there, Kevin O'Connell said this, I think, right before the break, right before the kind of the offseason thing started. I had asked him kind of what's going on with Hockenson, and the nugget he threw in there that I think is worth keeping in mind is they may be in a situation where they don't need to use the PUP list, because the PUP list is, that 6-week thing where he's out that long. He mentioned the possibility that you could put him on injured reserve at the beginning of the season, knowing that's a shorter turnaround, and they may have him able to keep practicing and rehabbing in that short stretch of things at the beginning of the season and possibly be back sooner than the PUP list would allow you to do it. So if that's the case, we're probably talking October, which is, I think, better than you would have probably expected it to be, given the timing of when that injury happened and the fact that the surgery took a while until his MCL was going to heal. So I think a lot of this, the timing of it, it tends to be, once things get strong enough, the cutting and putting force on it and putting weight on it in a way that you'd have to do in a game seems like it happens a little bit later on in the process. So some of it we probably just haven't seen yet, because I don't know that they've seen all of it completely. It seems like once you get to that point, you have a little better sense of how is our timetable looking, how is he going to handle all this stuff. But the fact that O'Connell mentioned IR possibly instead of PUP seems like an optimistic sign to me, because it tells you that they think this may not be the full 6 weeks plus that a PUP list thing would happen to be.
So training camp's going to start, and they're going to have this card table set up. There's going to be 2 contracts on the table, and as J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner run out for their first practice, they're both going to scribble their names on it, and then it's going to all be good. And everything's going to be great. Perfect timing from Kwesi's standpoint. And then we'll actually now get to see what the cap space looks like into this season and beyond. They do have the ability to roll some over, I believe, if so compelled.
Yep.
But have you? I mean, are your ears to the ground on the idea of this team maybe not being done adding, in terms of maybe we're seeing something on the defensive line? I mentioned Levi Drake Rodriguez. Is there a depth piece there, an O lineman here, a Robert Woods type wide receiver bit there? Have you kind of just continued to wonder at all if this is truly the finished product of what we'll see, even as recently as the next 2 weeks here when training camp starts?
Yeah, no doubt. Because you look at last year, they added Dalton Reisner, they added Cam Akers, who I think we could possibly see again. In fact, there was, I think...
Wasn't that weird, though?
Yeah.
Because it was on the ESPN transaction bit.
But I never saw it on the NFL's.
No, and then the team had not made an announcement there. Yeah. This was like a week that had gone by.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless, I mean, that was a weird thing, but I do think if
that was a
there's
holiday, right?
Yeah.
The post office took the day off that day, so something got lost in the mail.
Yeah,
wrong inbox, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was a strange
fax
one.
machine was broken.
But yes, and whether it's guys like that they've added in the past, you have seen them continue to say, let's look for ways to improve the team. In fact, you could make the argument that Kwesi has done as much with moves like that to make additions to the roster as he has in the draft, whether it's the Hockenson trade a couple of years ago. Obviously, last year, things get weird because you have a quarterback go down and you have to go acquire Josh Dobbs. But, some of those things, he has shown he's willing to go do it. And looking at the cap, they've got $26 million. So if there's somebody they like, if there's a veteran they want that they feel like can help them, I would have no doubt that they could continue to go out and look at those things. I mean, even
it could be a 1-year deal, so we're not talking long-term commitment either. Yeah.
And a lot of the guys they signed this offseason were on 1-year deals. I mean, they have a ton of free agents. They have 37
free agents. Yeah. It's some crazy number like that.
Yes.
Well, how about that? We're going to have a season. It's going to be a lot of fun, regardless of how it turns out. And then you're going to have another springtime of dealing with all the free agents. Will he stay? Will he go? Are we still in a transition period trying to get younger? The Harrison Phillips of the world, that name's going to come up for sure.
There probably won't be a quarterback will he or won't he thing, though. So
Probably
it'll be a little quieter, knock on wood, than last year was.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's going to be a lot of that.
5 months from now, what's Sam Darnold's extension going to cost?
Yeah.
Can't wait to talk about that.
Oh, my gosh. The Case Keenum of 2024, possibly. I mean, you think about it, it's like it does have a little bit of that vibe.
It does.
Because, I mean, Keenum had not had a good camp that year to the point where I'd heard rumblings that they were thinking about cutting him at the end of that camp, and obviously they didn't. And Sam Bradford has the great opener against the Saints in 17 and then gets hurt, and Keenum takes it. And even, I think, a couple of weeks into it, Keenum were not, I think their first 2 losses that season, they didn't score 10 points. So it's like, is he going to be the guy? And then Bradford comes back against the Bears. Keenum leads him back and takes off from there. But the end of that year, Bradford was a free agent. Keenum was a free agent. Teddy was a free agent. And then they signed Kirk Cousins. Obviously, that's not going that way with J.J. McCarthy here now.
Probably
but
not.
The Sam Darnold thing, in terms of if he goes out and has a big year, he could put himself in a good position to go sign a deal probably somewhere else, I would think. But, it is a really interesting thing because he's still only 26. He was the 3rd pick in the draft. Obviously has shown he has the talent to play in the NFL. So if he goes out and figures it all out, I don't know what they do there. I can't imagine they would sign him and then have McCarthy kind of waiting in the wings still. But if you do and you have an asset you can control and trade and maybe they go that route. I don't know. That would be a really interesting one. But yes, I think the Darnold thing is a big storyline and for good reason because they do want him to take the job and run. I think in a perfect world for them, it's him pretty much all the way through the season, and McCarthy gets that year to kind of just sit and wait and develop. So, yeah, I mean, all of that, if he goes and does that and he's playing well, there are going to be financial rewards for him, and how he handles that, how they handle that is going to be a lot of fun to watch because it could be a fun storyline as this thing develops.
I appreciate you coming in studio today. Appreciate really on a weekly basis through the season, most of the off seasons as well, and hanging out with us and the work you do for the Vikings.
For sure.
Man. We'll talk to you maybe next week and definitely as we get into camp. It'll be an absolute party.
We will we'll see each other on the perch, and in here it'll be pretty much a regular thing from here on out.
Indeed.
Should be fun.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, at Ben Goessling via X. Read all of his work, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. And when we return, some news before fellow Star Tribune cohort, the columnist Lavelli Neal III joins us in studio on the Fan.
Find our Mall of America street team all summer long out at our station events, and come find us and ask us about our MOA mystery cards where everyone is a winner. See where we'll be next at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. We're going to do a short news segment, maybe carry some of these talkers over with Lavelli Neal III in studio next segment. News to Nord is brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com, live racing. You got table games, poker, blackjack, and feeling the felt all year round, live racing and play, and the calendars at CanterburyPark.com. Where are we headed, Max?
We're headed over to England to start with your favorite sport, Nordo. One of your favorite sports, at least. And so I know we're going to be talking Twins and then American football with Lavelli Neal III. So I figured why not start with football, because yesterday was a huge day. Spain beat England 2-1 to win their record 4th Euros tournament. As the announcer on the broadcast that I was watching said, just how many times can your heart break England is without a major title since they won the World Cup in 1966.
Yeah, and it's not, of course, soccer is effectively a second-tier daycare sport in the United States. Yeah. It is the preferred option in many other parts of the world.
Pretty much every other part.
Minnesota sports fans, we should all be fans of the Three Lions. We should all be fans of England and just kind of understand how bad things have gotten there. They did, I believe, tie the game up. It was sometime in the second half, and then Spain gets the second one, pulls away 2-1. This is an England team that at some point, Southgate and company, they wanted to fire everybody in tournament. They have found ways better than anybody over the course of the last 30 or so years, at least that I've been paying attention to it. They'll play down to the worst of competition. They can play up to the best of competition. And in some ways, they always find themselves right in the middle. Minnesota sports fans, does that sound familiar to you? Because England and their soccer squad have done it. Cool moments. The big goal against Netherlands, pushing themselves into a spot where they could be here in this game. But it is no major trophies for England since 1960. 60 or 66?
66.
It is 66, yeah.
Martin Luther King was still alive, just for some historical perspective.
Do you have, you probably don't. Yeah, it's been a long time, absolutely. And it was probably a different world back then. There's no doubt about that. I'm trying to find, they won a 1-0 game in 1966 over, it was West Germany. Oh, yeah, there were two Germanys back then, too. That's how long it's been. Martin Luther King was still alive, and there were two Germanys. I don't know if McCarthyism was in play back then. Right. People were still hiding under their desks in schools. Yes, again, a very different universe the last time England stood on top of the planet. 1966. Not surprising. That's how it works for Minnesota sports fans. It's how it works for English soccer fans. They will get as close as you can get, and they will crumble, and they will fold like a cheap suit, and they did out of the Spaniards. And the Spaniards have been in the midst, really, if you do follow soccer, kind of in a generational change the last 6 or 8 years as the Iniestas and the Sergio Ramos and all their mainstays that led them to a 2010 World Cup win. Those guys are getting old. They're retiring. Who's going to take the reins? And this fresh group that they have now is looking pretty damn good. And it's their fourth Euros tournament.
Yeah. That 16-year-old they got or whatever, he's a freaking beast.
They have a hell of a squad, man. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to Argentina for winning Copa America last night. Congratulations to anybody that figured out how to shoehorn about 150,000 fans into a stadium, Miami Hard Rock.
My God!
And I'll talk more. It was chaos, pandemonium, but that's how I swear to you, Central American soccer, South American soccer. We'll talk more about this with Lavelle as well. Final hour. They do this
right.
50,000 fans will just show up to a stadium without a ticket, and they will assert their will. And how you handle that, specifically with the World Cup coming here in 2 years, good luck. You are operating at your own peril. They will climb through ventilation ducts. They will climb up parking structures. They will put their lives in jeopardy to get inside the stadium, as we saw many Colombian and Argentinian fans doing yesterday. So good luck to the 2026 World Cup host, the United States / Canada and Mexico.
There were people who had tickets that couldn't get in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's utterly unbelievable.
Americanized prices for this event. They're paying $2,000 a ticket, and they're actually outside the fence as like a family. Like the kids are being hoisted up and thrown over the fence to get into this game.
It's unbelievable.
It's not something that the average event goer here in the States has really ever had to deal with. But let's just say get used to it. Get ready for it and prepare accordingly.
The Lynx blew a late lead in the fourth quarter yesterday afternoon to fall to the Indiana Fever 81-74. Indiana outscored the Lynx 28-14 in the fourth to come from behind and steal the W. Caitlin Clark scored 17 points to go along with 6 assists. I believe she set she's like second or some sort of record for most assists for a rookie, and we're only at the halfway point of the season, which is incredible. On the Lynx side of things, Alana Smith led the way with 18 points. The Lynx will be back in action Wednesday afternoon when they host the Mystics.
Yeah, I think that's a nooner, too, on Wednesday at Target Center. And we're going to have Wendell Epps. You can hear his voice calling the games. Excited to have him make his 9 to noon debut tomorrow. You had him on yesterday. Worst case scenario.
9 to noon debut with you guys. He was actually on when I filled and hosted 9 to noon.
Excuse me. Yeah. No, that's my fault. So the second time he is on the show, he's already made his debut, but it's the first time I'll get to meet him. Excited to do it. The Lynx absolutely blew it, and they had a packed house yesterday. Totally cool, raucous environment. They're setting attendance records, the whole thing, and then they just limped their way to the finish line over the last 5 to 6 minutes. Aaliyah Boston, as good as Caitlin was yesterday, she was 2 of 11 from deep. Aaliyah Boston had a 17 and 16 game. She was fantastic for the Fever. Hey, look, more Lynx conversation than you've gotten 9 to noon maybe in the past. You're getting a ton of it nowadays. So on to the Mystics and on to a Lynx team now. They were absolutely dismantled by Seattle on Friday. So a couple of tough losses in a row.
No fee, so that's tough.
Exactly. So plantar fasciitis, which I believe she's dealing with, and then Carlos Correa, plantar fasciitis for him.
Ugh.
A lot of foot ailments, a lot of foot-related problems that need to be fixed. Speaking of that, here's what we'll do is we're going to pause now to get back on track. We will jump into the Minnesota Twins. We will jump Major League Baseball draft. Yeah, it's a thing that took place. Believe me, it did. The Twins got a K-State Wildcat. They got a shortstop out of yesterday's draft, the 21st overall pick. We're going to talk about that. We got a book in the play. We got the columnist. We got sports galore, the final hour. Thank you to Max, a very truncated, due to my bad clock management, News de Nord, brought to you, Max's Meanderings, brought to you by the Casino at Canterbury Park. But we're going to continue these conversations around the corner with Lavelle from the Strib next on The Fan.